Welcome back to Indomitable Conversations, our ongoing series dedicated to exploring the incredible stories of resilience overcoming the foster care system. I'm Di Ciruolo, author of Indomitable, a foster care story, and I am genuinely thrilled to have you here for our third session. Today, we continue our exploration of the indomitable spirit that resides within those who have navigated the foster care system. Our guest today brings a unique perspective and an inspiring story that underscores that resilience that can emerge from adversity. And if you haven't already, consider picking up a copy of Indomitable, a foster care story. Your support not only fuels my ability to advocate, but also contributes to our collective awareness of improving the foster care system. Thank you for joining us in community, and let's continue our collective awareness. Today's guest speaker is the indomitable Charell Star. Charell is a storyteller with a passion for creating experiences that connect people in a way that celebrates, inspires, entertains, and empowers. She loves working across all mediums to tell a story and reach audiences, and believes the most powerful messages delivered through authenticity, personal connection, and conversation. On air, you will find her speaking about the latest trends in style, beauty, tech, and culture as a host/contributor for various broadcasts and digital media outlets, including NBC New York Live, AKC TV, Fox, Good Day New York, and Second Look TV, among others. Wow. Woo!
That's a lot.
I'm going to continue here. Woo! I'm going to keep going. I love it. Across the web, Charell regularly pens pieces for lifestyle and cultural outlets. Covering technology, business, fashion, beauty, and culture, Charell provides readers with sage advice and tips to enhance their lives. Her articles and lifestyle series have been featured all over, including Business News Daily, Tom's IT Pro, Sister to Sister, eHow, VinePair, and MadameNoire. Wow, I can talk today, honestly. At events, you will find Charell on the main stage, deftly emceeing or moderating informative panel conversations with newsmaking entrepreneurs, influencers, and leaders. She has been a featured host, speaker, and moderator at conferences, seminars, and roundtables across the country. Charell is also a former foster care youth and uses her platform to advocate for the needs of other foster care youth across the country. She is the featured subject in Feeling Wanted, a foster care film that recounts her years in care. The award-winning documentary by Yasmin Mistry has become a training tool for the child welfare organizations around the world. Her foster care journey has been profiled by Humans of New York, which inspired readers to donate more than $140,000 to support youth in care. No matter the storytelling medium, Charell's goal is to inspire others with a message of authenticity, inspiration, and the power of believing in yourself. Wow, that is a lot of awesome. Charell, being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Di.
Absolutely. Wow. That is fantastic.
I don't think I've had anyone ever read my whole bio.
Oh my God, of course I'm going to read your whole bio. I want everyone to know. Other fosters, are you kidding me? I will tell everybody everything. I'm going to say your name every time I'm somewhere. Okay. So I'll be honest with you, while I was doing my research on sort of who you were and your experience to do prep questions, I saw that you had been on the Fostering Change podcast with Rob Scheer. And I am speaking with Rob on Saturday. And so I sat down and watched the whole thing, and I'm like, hello, future friends. So, like we do. So anyway, I don't want to assume our audience knows your story, even with your incredible bio. So I wondered if you'd just get us off started by sharing it with us.
Yeah, of course. And Rob is amazing, so definitely a great person to know. My story, my foster care story, or my journey, I should say, started out with me living with my great-grandmother when I was really, really young, maybe 2 or 3 years old. She got really sick, and so I ended up in foster care. And so I bounced around from 6 different homes in 6 different years, a mix of both foster care as well as kinship care. Some homes were great. Some homes were absolutely awful. I experienced physical abuse, mental abuse, sexual abuse while I was in care. And so, it was a really long struggle. I ended up being reunified with my mom. My younger sister and I were reunified with my mom. And I spent a couple years living with her before I received a scholarship to go to boarding school. So that reunification process or period was really pretty short for a window, especially when we're talking about healing trauma. So it really didn't happen. And so I went off to boarding boarding school. Then I went off to college and, you know, started working in marketing and advertising and public relations. I went off to London for a bit as well. And so got to travel. And so, you know, I've lived this really rich life in spite of my time in care and learning how to sort of deal with the trauma, deal with the triggers, and come out the other side.
Right, right. That's an amazing story. What an amazing opportunity to be able to, you know, go and learn in a way that maybe a lot of other kids didn't get a chance. So that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud for you. I guess my next question is sort of, I wonder why you would continue, or why start or continue advocating for foster kids. A lot of us get out of the system and never look back, right? Like a lot of us get out and just like close the door on that part of our lives. What makes you so passionate about like sort of holding that ladder for others?
Yeah, you know, first I will say the people who, you know, get out of care and just want to move on, that is your right. That is your privilege. You don't owe anyone anything. So don't let anyone make you feel bad about that.
Absolutely.
We deal with trauma in our own ways. For me, though, I felt like I was in a good place in my life where sharing my story could be of value to other people. Hearing what I had experienced and went through and came out the other side could be of a lot of value to youth in care, to potential foster parents, to judges, to advocates. And so at the time when I was actually asked to share my story, I felt that I was in a good place where I didn't have to be afraid of sharing it anymore. There was an experience early in my professional career where I had just mentioned that I had been in foster care, and my boss's like entire attitude changed towards me. Like literally I went from being promoted and, you know, being allowed to like do what I do and just go off and work to suddenly her checking everything. She was checking my expense report suddenly. And like, it was really like a bad situation. So I early on was like, oh, I can't tell anyone.
Yes.
I've been in foster care. And it took a while for me to get over that fear, get over that worry that I would be unfairly judged for being in care. And that would hurt my career. So it took me a little bit to like get comfortable with it. But once I did, I was like, oh my God, my story is actually helping people. And I'm so glad that I didn't keep it to myself.
Yeah. You know, that has been sort of my experience as well. Why do you think people, if they hear that we've been in foster care, why do you think the assumption is that we are less capable rather than the fact that we have had to work twice as hard for twice as long to get to that
preach.
Like, how can that be? You know what I mean? Like, how can that be? Like, why wouldn't you look at me and assume that I'm very good at what I do? You know,
exactly. You know, I know part of the challenge for a lot of people is this representation or misunderstanding of what foster care is to begin with. And so I have talked to many of parents, of foster parents who believe foster care or foster care youth who've been in care are juvenile delinquents. They've done something wrong to be in care. So they're not trustworthy. You shouldn't have them in your home. You shouldn't have them around your family. And that misconception, it just colors so many people's opinion of us. And it is a misconception because kids in care, youth in care have done nothing to end up in care. You end up in care because something is happening. Something bad is happening to you or around you. And so you are removed from your home. You yourself have done nothing wrong. And so that misconception just colors so many people's opinion. And instead of having the conversation, asking the questions, they just tend to go with that stereotype, that misconception, and it just holds foster youth back. It holds youth in care back.
Yes, absolutely. Why do you think people need to believe that, especially people who aren't involved in the system, why do you think they need to believe that children who are experiencing the foster care system are in some small way complicit in their own circumstances?
Honestly, I think it's because it's easier to ignore us. It's easier to pretend that we don't exist. If it's your fault, why would I help you? You know, I really believe that is part of it. Instead of having compassion, instead of having a little bit of empathy, we rather, you know, blame people, blame the victim, blame the survivor than actually extending a hand to help them and figure out why this family within my community is struggling. Why do they need a little extra help? And so I think that is a big part of it, that it's easier to wrap our heads around that this is their fault versus this is something I can help with. And really it's about us trying to get people to move towards that. This is something I can help with sort of frame of mind.
Absolutely. I had exactly that happening when I was coming up. Just so often I would explain that I was, or I would have to say that I was in foster care, right? Mm-hmm. And the next thing would be somebody kind of looking at me differently, the eyebrows, the clutched purses, the, all of that. And you're just like, what do you mean? I'm just, you know what I mean? They don't see us as sort of victims of the circumstances. They see us as perpetrators of the circumstances, or at least, infected by the circumstances in a way that like we would spread to other, unassuming situations and children. And I always felt so isolated by that, right? I always felt like people felt like I was poisoned, and that because of that, I couldn't make connections, and I couldn't become part of a community, and I couldn't hang out with other kids. And it really led to feelings of unworthiness in myself, and just, as I say, feeling so alone and scared, and like I deserved their feelings of just disdain, right? How did you deal with that in your own life?
I think for me, it was helpful that I could remember my great-grandmother. So when I was in those situations of people being cruel to me, people being mean, there's just bad things happening around me, there was always a part of my brain that was like, this isn't what family is anyway. And so this isn't real. And so like, it kept me safe. It kept me sane to be like, no, you can't tell me that no one loves me and that no one wants me, because I know my great grandmother does, and I know she loves me, and I know the only reason I'm stuck with you is because she's sick and super old as well. But she's sick, and so I think when I talk to other youth about their time in care, I do realize that was a privilege to have that memory or have that feeling of warmth and family, and be able to wrap myself around it and protect myself from what people were saying or how people were treating me. I think I held on to that. That was like my saving grace to get through those situations when people are saying you're not a real kid, or you deserve to be in foster care, or your mom's a drug addict or a drug crackhead, and then so things like that. And you as a child, you're just doing your best to try to like block these things and not internalize them, but some of them land, and like it's painful. It's actually painful. But I think I was very lucky in just having someone who I knew loved me, and I held on to that for dear life. Yes.
You're weirding me out, because honestly, the only person I had in my life was my great-grandmother, not even a grandmother, great-grandmother. So that's kind of a little bit, and so like literally great-grandma. And the only reason I couldn't stay with her, and she recounted it to her dying day as the saddest day of her life when the police came and took us away. And just, she lived in elderly housing. She couldn't have overnight guests. She wanted to keep us, but she just didn't have the support from the system. So that sort of leads me to my next question. Why are we doing that? Why are we taking children from family members that potentially love them but need support and services and all the things that we provide to foster families or foster parents or people part of the service, the system, but not to families? Why are we doing this, do you think?
I think it's because we have a very broken system. We have a system that is built on the idea of separation is the best thing for not the family, but for potential adoptees, potential people who want to be parents. And so we tend to lean in this country and other countries. We're not the only one that has this sort of system. UK is big on this as well. Removing youth from their culture, from their people, from their family, to sort of indoctrinate them in how we believe they should be raised, how we believe they should be act, what type of culture we believe they should be in. And we have never as a community, as a society, decided to break that down and actually question what that's led us to. That has led us to, 400,000 youth a year being in foster homes, separated from their family. When anywhere, if you do the math, anywhere, so most youth in care are removed from their homes for neglect. So anywhere between 66% and 80% of youth removed from their families is due to neglect. Neglect is a very, very wide-ranging sort of term. It could be everything from you're totally being ignored and are raising yourself to mom lost her job, and so we're struggling with food this month. Or I live in a slum. I live in New York. I live in a slumlord apartment, and they don't want to turn the heat on, and so instead of turning the heat on, they're going to call child services to like ruin my life instead of paying for someone to fix the heat. Literally. These are stories that I come across and situations I come across. And instead of us dealing with the community of how do we make this family unit whole? How do we ensure that what we deem neglect, which is really just poverty, a lot of the things we call neglect is just poverty. How do we deal with the challenges of growing up in poverty? How do we give them resources so we don't need to remove a child from a home? Again, anywhere between 66 and 80% cases are neglect cases, depending on where the state you're in. And so that really means we are punishing people for being poor.
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So, God, I could talk about this forever. I get a lot of feedback, right? Like just forever. I just, you know what I mean? I have to keep my thoughts together. So I don't know about your experience with this, but I get kind of a lot of feedback, because I'm me, I look like this, I talk like this, that, the system must be doing well and must be doing good things if I got out to be this person, whatever this person is. So what do you say to people who think that you're a good example of what the average foster kid can overcome?
So I get this a lot because my bio is so long and they've done so many fun things. And what I always try to remind people of is I went into the system with a relatively strong support system, a belief that, I belonged in a family, that I was loved, that I had people that cared for me, that I could accomplish other things outside of foster care. Foster care always in my mind, even when I was being beat, even when I was being, abused. This was temporary. This wasn't my normal. This isn't what I believed life had to be like. And so I'm not saying that I did it on my own. I absolutely did not do this on my own. I had a lot of people who helped me through care, getting me into boarding school, helping me get into college. Like I had a lot of people in my corner, but the fact of the matter is you don't need to support foster care or support youth in care because of people like me.
Right.
There's always going to be a certain number of people who always make it through just because of their own tenacity, because of their own belief, because they had a great grandmother who taught them what real love was like before they went into this broken system. We need to make foster care better for the kids that don't have that, for the majority of kids that don't have that. This system is so broken that a majority of youth who go through it end up homeless. Like not like just end up homeless. Just absolutely homeless, end up in jail. More youth or youth are more likely to end up homeless or in jail than anything else. In foster care. So we need to lean into fixing the system, not because you want them to be like me. They can be like me, but it's if you help them. There's always going to be a certain number of youth who are make it through without any help at all. They're gonna figure out what the scholarship program is. They're going to figure out what the after school program is so they don't have to go to that terrible foster home and stay outside. We need you to care because some youth don't even know that exists. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to ask. They don't know how to speak up for themselves. And guess what? They should. They're kids. They're kids. And so we need to lean in to help those kids and those youth who need that support. And it's a majority of the youth in care.
Yes, it absolutely is. Most of us end up right back into the system within like a year, right after we age out of foster care. We're right back in the system in sort of, you know, in jail or in abuse situations. We attract predators. Exactly.
Exactly. Child trafficking.
Child
The majority
trafficking. Yep.
of youth who are trafficked have been in foster care. They get written off as another written off moment, but get written off as runaways. Who am I running away from? The government is my parents. You guys need to come find me. Like literally, they just get written off.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely the case. And that is true of most of the kids that I knew that came up in foster care with me. I am one of 2 other survivors that I know, not counting yourself and Rob, one of 2, right? Like it's me and like a couple of other girls that I know, but that's it. That's it. And I don't think people understand how many kids I would have run into in my time, right? How many people that I knew, how many lives are just lost or stolen or end. Like it's incredible to me how little we know about a system that we feel like is a welfare system, is about child, you know, is about helping a child. So I guess my next question is, what do you say to folks who think that kids in the foster care system are better off? Is that something that you ran into a lot? I used to get the feedback that like, oh, well, better than where you were, right? Like I was in an abusive home and I was getting better than where you were, right? Like,
Right. No. Yeah. So I have a story about this. So I got an award, Angels in Adoption, from the Congressional Institute of Adoption. No, I can't remember the last A. But anyway, got an award. I am there. I'm talking to a judge who's also getting the awards. They give it out to someone in all 50 states. And the judge is talking, sharing to the table how, you know, he had just placed a youth in a foster home, and the kid was going to be better off there, and, you know, because his mom had issues with drugs. And I turned to him and I'm like, well, you don't actually know that's true. And as someone speaking from experience who had a parent who had a drug addiction, it would be better to get that mom resources than to remove her child from her. You probably took away the one thing that might have grounded her, and might have been her hope and her inspiration. So you punished her, you punished him as well, and you have no idea. You cannot say that this is, you know, better place for this child. And like he looked at me and like I was clear to me, no one had ever said that to him. No one had ever said, you have no idea that that's a better situation for the child. And actually you advocated all of your responsibility when the moment you remove that child without finding out how you actually help his mom. And it was the shock on his face when I've said this from the entire table and he's a judge and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm not a trial. I can say what I want. But this idea that we believe that youth are always going to be better in a stranger's home versus the home that they grow up in with their family, with their familial bonds, with their community is just asinine. It's absolutely asinine. It is smarter, better for the youth. It's also cheaper for communities and governments if we were to actually give the resources to the families that need them. And too many times we make this assumption, or the community makes assumption, the government makes this assumption that you know, different is better, and it's like, no. Building this community, strengthening this family is what's better. And it's you know, this hard, it's story by story. It's talking with people, it's advocating that is slowly making this change. And so I do encourage youth to keep sharing their stories, keep posting on Instagram, keep posting on TikTok. You know, you never know when your story is going to be the one the judge listens to, because they're not listening to the people in their courtroom. They are assuming they know better. And that's terrifying and frustrating. And it's so unfair. But, you know, that's this patronizing view of, you know, we know better than you because you are struggling. But again, it's just another way of penalizing people for being poor.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I never felt like a child. I never felt like I couldn't talk about my own. Like I remember being able to like discuss what I wanted from my life and what my goals were and like how I wanted to be, like how I wanted my life to go as early as like 6 or 7, talking to judges who were like on my cases and just being like, no, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I need. And just being entirely ignored. Oh, well, we know better. Well, you know, better than where you were. We're going to do this and we're going to put you there. And I ended up in extremely abusive foster care situations, and I couldn't get people to listen because people decided that, well, you would have grown up in poverty. You would have grown up in this kind of situation. At least, at least we're bleaching you, we're changing you so that you can go off and do whatever. And it's profound, and it touches everything. It touches, so it's fed by so many different aspects of what we need to believe as a community of people about children in care. I found it so, not even just frustrating, but like disheartening. I just found it so.
Yeah, absolutely so. Like, people are assuming because you grew up in a poor family that you would be better off someplace else. And like, in no other situation would that make sense.
Right.
We watch this play out with like Paris Hilton, and props to Paris, for coming back and then using her platform to try to shut down these abusive group homes. Like, Paris, I love you. Keep doing what you're doing. No shame. But literally, we see this happening where in any other sort of economic street, this sort of separation doesn't happen. Like, it's only if you're poor or you're a person of color. Like, that's literally we lead into those two types of communities. Oh, poor people, we know better. People of color, we know better. And all you're doing is making things worse.
Yes. Ripping apart communities. And then we have children of color that are overrepresented in foster care by like what, 40%?
Yes. Yeah. Like, it's absolutely insane. And LGBTQ as well. Like, I mean, the numbers are insane for LGBTQ youth who are in care, because not only are sometimes they're turned out of their family home, but they're also turned out of foster homes.
Oh, yeah.
They're more likely to be sexually trafficked as well and abused. And so, like, you think you know better, but you're putting them in worse situations.
Yes. We just had a story out of Massachusetts recently, and I'm in Massachusetts. We just had a story out of Massachusetts recently where like a foster family that had been rejected because the mother of the house said like that she would just not be okay with having a, queer person in her home. And like people were like, oh, well, I'm sure that'll work itself out. I'm like, I hope it does not. Are you crazy?
Exactly.
Oh my God.
It's not for who? Not for the
what
youth.
What are you talking about?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God. They're going to get kicked out of their family home. And then what? They're going to be effectively indoctrinated out of who they are as people. Why do we need this? Nobody asked for this.
Or if they're not indoctrinated out of who they need to be, like, unfortunately, like unalive themselves, because that is high in foster care as well.
High in foster care.
And so, like, but no one wants to have these conversations.
No one wants to talk about
why this happens.
Yes. And I think that that's true of all of these problems that we think about as too big to solve, right? If a woman stays with a partner that's abusing her, oh, why did she stay? If someone is raped, oh, what was she wearing? If you end up in foster care, oh, well, what did you do? And you're like, what do you mean? How can you believe these things? How can you? And it's incredible to me because it feels as if we just, as human beings, as society, don't like things that can quote unquote just happen. Like we don't like things that can just happen to anybody. We need to believe that we are protected by our superiority in ways that are just not real, in ways that are just, not borne out by the statistics. And that to me is incredible ignorance for no reason, right? So it just.
People advocate their responsibility to their community. And it's exactly what you're saying. There's this idea that, well, they deserve it because it would never happen to me because I'm better than that. I would never let myself be in that situation. That would never happen to me. And so you just advocated any sort of community responsibility. This idea that, we are a nation of individual, this individualistic sort of eternal sort of way of being is destroying us.
Absolutely. I mean, America, the business, right? Absolutely. And I think that's sort of the other thing that like gives me stress about these prisons that are privatized. These juvenile delinquent centers, great name, by the way, juvenile delinquent centers that are privatized. And you're sort of seeing these kids go right into the system and then people are getting paid for it. And you're like, you must be joking. Like, how can we have made this a for-profit industry from children, from children that we're here to protect, that we owe, that we're responsible for. It's incredible. It's stunning.
And take it one step further, because they are for profit and they need to always grow to support shareholders. What happens when you don't have youth who are going in there based on the normal process? Then we open it up to, oh, well, we've got extra beds for foster youth. Now we've got foster youth who are in the juvenile delinquent system, who have no reason for being there outside of the city didn't have a bed for me, and now I'm in jail.
Now I'm in jail. Yes, absolutely. There was no room in the group home, which was already overpopulated, and now I'm in jail. Or, you know, even like the small things that are like crimes of poverty, kids going to jail. Like, you must be kidding me.
Like stealing. How are you sending a youth to jail for stealing food? I don't understand this. It's your responsibility to provide this.
Yes, literally. Yes, absolutely. So oh God, I can't even, because we aren't even having these conversations, right? So like, even when people talk to me about my experience and stuff, I get the feedback like, oh, you must have lived in a good home. It's so nice to know that there are good homes out there. And it's like, what about me is telling you that? Like, what about this is saying to you that I must have been in a good home, right? Like, what are you agreeing to on my behalf in order for that to be what, you know what I mean? So I'm just,
it's because you are in the environment that they are in. That they are in, and so you must be like me. You know, you come. Knocked over some stuff. But you know, you must be like me. You're in this environment, so you know you must have been okay. You went through good homes. That's a perfect, you're a perfect example of like how the system works. And it's like, no. I am the exact opposite. I am here because the system didn't work. And so I am using any amount of free time I have to change the system, because you will only listen to me because I am the right messenger for you.
Right. I'm a palatable messenger, right? Like I am, and you know, people, and I call this emotional voyeurism, right? Like people will kind of come by and want to hear about it and, you know, listen about it and cry a little bit and then go off back to their lives without having done anything or learned anything. And that was my experience as a child. I always felt like people would want to hear, and I felt like it was my responsibility to fight for us all, like we kind of do. And people would just casually be like, oh, well, good for you. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Right.
And it's the same thing we were just talking about, between like the fact that both I must have lived in a good home and that's the only reason I survived, but also I don't deserve to be here and I need to have my work checked. You know what I mean? Like how can those two things be true at the same time? Either I'm exceptional or I'm, you know, got here by mistake. Which thing is it? What do you need to believe here?
Well, this is why we talk about being like twice as good. Like I think that definitely for women, for people of color, and for any youth who've gone through any sort of trials and tribulations, like you have to be twice as good, because people are coming at you because they just can't accept that you could go through something so terrible and still come out the other side. Like that's not how their brain works.
Yes. And that's so wild to me, because having written the book, having people read the book and sort of reading my stories, when I came out with it, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so unrelatable. This is going to be, you know, people are going to look down on me for the rest of my life. They're going to Google my name and it's going to say person who went through these things, right? But in fact, people got back to me and said things like, Di, it's like you were living in my home with me. And these weren't people who had been through foster care. These were people who had just been through different stories or different parts of my story that had experienced that same trauma. And I felt like suddenly this like epiphany that so many of us had these traumatic experiences coming up through childhood, that maybe it was more relatable than we think, because we're taught to hide it, right? We're taught to like be ashamed of it. So I guess what I would want to know from you is just sort of, when did you find out that you weren't the only one who had gone through the things that you had gone through, and sort of how did you process that?
You know, honestly, I would say I realized that or figured that out pretty late. It was around the time when I started sharing my story, and you know, becoming, you know, transitioning to becoming an advocate for youth. It was listening to other youth stories and hearing the similarities, like youth who I'm in the film Feeling Wanted. It's part of a full series on youth who've been through it, foster care, telling the stories their own way. And the second film in the series is indigenous young woman who was separated from her family and separated from her brother. So her brother grew up in a different home than she did. And listening to her story, there were so many similar, and again, very, very different part of the country, different culture, but there were so many similarities between the trauma, the pain, the abuse, the guilt that she had experienced. And it was like a light bulb went off for me that like, this is universal for any youth who's been in care. I sat on a panel a number of years ago, pre-COVID, with youth who've been through child welfare systems. So here in Europe, we had one woman who was a Holocaust survivor. It was telling, her when they separated her from her family, she was older, but talking about when they separated her from her family, and the theme that just rang true for everyone. There's about 8 of us on this panel. They rang true for all of us, regardless of when it happened or where you lived, or how old you were. Like, this theme just rang all the way true of this like universal trauma that we had experienced and that only we would understand. But it is true for anyone who goes through this situation. And so I think it was situations like that that let me know that there is this community out there of people who are gone through this, are still going through this, and who need to process this, who need to heal from this. And my story is not the end all be all for getting you on your way to healing, but at least you know that you're not alone. Like, and I wish I had that when I was in care. I wish I didn't know that there was someone else. I didn't know anyone else who was in foster care.
I didn't either.
I didn't know a single older soul when I was in foster care. I thought this was only happening to me.
Yes.
I was the only one who got taken from my great grandma. And so like, it's so important when you're going through something to know that there are other people who've experienced it. And so I'm very glad that people are sharing TikTok, Instagram, and sharing their stories and taking back the narrative and helping others heal and let them know that they're not alone.
Yes, absolutely. And sort of taking away that like silence and the shame and the feeling othered and alone, because honestly, when I was coming up in school, I didn't know anybody like me. And I knew a lot of the kids felt like they needed to let me know that they knew that there wasn't anybody else like me. And I felt like that must be coming from parents that didn't understand what I was doing in their community, what I was doing there, how I had snuck my way in, as it were. So I completely agree. Absolutely. So what do you think, and I know what mine is, so I'm going to ask you, what do you think the biggest factor in your survival has been?
One, I think, again, living with my great grandmother, from jump and having that memory of her. Again, I was very, very young. Like, I wasn't even in kindergarten. So like, I was like 3 or 4. But I have these very vivid memories of living with her, being loved by her, of learning like life skills. Like, my great grandma taught me to cook. Like, I would make eggs with her every morning. Like, she'd let me mix the eggs and I'd pour them into the pan, and like having that memory of this is what family was like. So I really credit her a lot with helping me survive. And so that is definitely the greatest impact on me making it through care. And I would say, random angels throughout the way, who, would move me into the gifted and talented class when I was moved schools in the middle of the year, who would round us up and put us in special programs, who would let me stay in the after school program, even though I didn't have a signed permission slip. Just these angels that just made a way out of no way, and like figured that, I was worth investing in and worth like trying to keep safe in those moments. And so like, I'm so appreciative to each and every one of them. I wouldn't have made it through without them.
Yes, absolutely. I think, anytime I think about that, I think the answer has to be both. I think you're right. My great grandmother having sort of given me that foundation, angels throughout my life, which I call out in sort of each chapter. So every time I'm dealing with like the worst of the worst, there was definitely always somebody who saw the humanity in me and the need for protection in me, and took that opportunity to take a very small action to help me get by. And I thought that that was just incredible of them, because I don't want people to think that what they have to do is like this big, you don't have to become a foster parent. You don't have to change the world. You change the world by just doing these small actions, right? And it changed everything for people like you and me. And I would also say reading, right? Reading,
Yep.
oh
Yes.
my God. I mean, LeVar Burton PBS changed my life, right? Like, I was obsessively reading all the time, escaping into reading. It would let me know, not only was I able to sort of self-educate in a way that like I would not have been able to otherwise because I didn't have those sort of same opportunities, but also I was able to know that this wasn't okay. What I was going through wasn't normal. It wasn't forever. That was important. Like, you know, it had so much value to my life that I always tell people that reading changed my life, right? Like, absolutely.
I feel you 100%. I mean, so the book Matilda.
Yes!
Books, for knowing that like there are bad parents in the world. It's not just me. And like, you know, like the chapter when she goes to the library for the first time and the words, and no one makes, and the librarian doesn't make her feel dumb. Then she's like, it's okay, just let them wash over you. Although my husband, who's an educator, is like, that's not what we would tell a child. We'd help them sound them out. But
we don't need that.
When I was a child, that's what I needed. I just needed someone to say, like, you're not going to know everything. It's okay. Just keep going. And so, yes, I agree with you 100%. There were some books that just you know, helped me through.
Absolutely. Just like Matilda, you're so right. Oh, good call. So what, I want to be mindful of your time here. I'm going kind of long here. What do you say to foster kids who reach out to you now? Because I still get people who reach out to me. What do you say to people who reach out to you?
You know, it depends on what they are sharing. So I get a lot of youth. I will say, you know, from the time before being featured in Humans in New York, and then after, the depth of what people will share with me in like a DM or an email has definitely changed. And so no challenges there. You know, keep sharing. If you want to reach out to me, sometimes you just need to tell another person. And so, you know, I'm okay with that. But it depends on what people share. Because some of the things people have shared, I have talked with my therapist, because like I need to figure out the right way to respond to them or to provide, like, so it's not so much providing advice. It's just like letting them know that like, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. And I'm glad they told someone, but it's heavy for me to sometimes hear as well. And so, you know, it depends on what they're sharing, but if it's something that is heavy, one, letting them know that like, you know what, it's not your fault. Like, it's not like, so let's start there. Not your fault. Like, you were a child. The system failed you 100%. And that is not your responsibility. That is not your problem. Like, that is not your issue. That is not your fault. But the question is, what do you do now? And so like, you know, where is that leading you? What is that guiding you towards? Hopefully it's guiding you towards something good, and something good, it could be baby steps. Like, you know, don't think that you have to mirror someone else's path. Like, figure out what is going to make you happy and take the baby steps to get there. And so I feel like most of my responses are usually somewhere around there. Every once in a while, someone will ask my advice on like, do you think I should try to take this out to court, or I should try to sue? And you know, I'm like, I can't give legal advice, but what I can say is, if it's on your heart and you are okay with just being able to share it, to have it out in the world, and if that would make you feel better, that would make you feel like you are back in control, then do what you need to do. Like, do what you need to do. I also don't think there should be a statute of limitations on sexual assault, on rape, on any of these things. And so again, I get a lot of DMs around, you know, things like that. And it's frustrating that people have no other recourse. But sometimes, you know, your recourse is just getting to see it in front of other people. And if that will make you, put you on the path to healing, then do it.
Isn't it so telling that when we think about the statute of limitations on sexual assault, that it literally exists, and they just say the quiet part out loud so that you don't have to worry about somebody coming back for you later? Like, what do you mean, right? Like, that's tremendous, right? That's stunning in its honesty, right? Like,
especially like, and I you know what, I will give you the he said, she said. It was years ago. But in the cases where you can bring proof, some of these youth, especially now in the age of cell phones and recordings of just like other people around, I can bring proof that this happened. And I don't know, too bad, so sad, statute of limitations.
Oh, statute of limitation.
We wouldn't want to ruin that person's life now, would we?
Right? Meanwhile, the victim of that crime, life ruined, can't forget about it, can't get out of bed, can't do anything. What about their lives? What about children who are being, you know, like these predators that are coming after children? What about their lives?
And then the people who like reoffend over and over and over again. And like, we have the power to stop this.
Of course.
So yes.
If we wanted to, right?
Yes, if we wanted to. If we wanted to.
If we wanted to, we have the power to change a lot of things. Yes. And that's the thing about the foster care system too, because every time somebody asks me, oh, Di, what should we change? And I tell them, if we wanted to make things better, we would already be studying those things. Yes. If we wanted to improve these things, these outcomes, change the lives of these children, we would. We would examine them, right? We would do it already. We would be having these conversations everywhere, not just between, you know, you and I. It wouldn't just be between people who are being impacted. It would be at every level of government. We wouldn't be talking about taking away people's rights and all of that sort of thing, and not recognizing how that may impact an already overburdened system. We'd be having these conversations at every level of government all over the world. And the fact that we aren't is very telling to me personally as somebody who was impacted, right?
Right. On the type of people, it's telling on the type of people we value and the type of people we don't.
Absolutely. And the types of scenarios we value and the type, you know what I mean? What we think people deserve, right? Yes. And I think that is incredibly telling and always has been to me. Okay, I want to get you out of here as much as I would love to talk to you until I am dead. So what's next for you?
What's next for me? I have an exciting new job that I can't tell people about just yet, but it's super exciting. So look out for an announcement on that in a few weeks. But you know, what's next for me is I'm going to, keep advocating. The film Feeling Wanted is premiering nationally on PBS next month. So it's going to be able to watch across the country. So super excited about that. So look out for that premiere date as well. And I'm working on a book. I'm actually almost done with my own book, and I'm very excited to get that done. Hopefully find a agent and a publisher and get it published. And so those are the big things that are next for me, and just keep, speaking up and being a thorn in people's side, and like getting them to invite me to speak because they think I'm going to be super bubbly, and hitting them with the hard stuff.
Right? Oh no. I mean, that's exactly me, right? I don't have time. I don't have time. If you're only going to give me 45 minutes, we're going to get to it immediately, right?
Exactly.
Oh my God. Don't ask me if you don't want to know.
Exactly.
So what are your socials? How do people follow you and support your work?
So follow me at Charell Star on Instagram. You can also follow me on TikTok. Hopefully I get more followers there. Yay. But Instagram and TikTok are my big two social profiles. I am quick to respond, especially on Instagram. I do a series, Ask Me Anything. I would say about 80% of the questions are about foster care. So, you can always DM me, ask me a question. If I don't respond to you directly, usually I'll make a video because I think more people will benefit from hearing the answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my God. I will follow you on TikTok. I'm my messiest on TikTok, honestly, because oh my gosh, I love TikTok. Oh my gosh. I love that for all of us.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to outro, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me. This has been a really great Di. This has been a really great conversation. I love this.
My gosh. Anytime, when you get your book out finally, let's have another conversation so we can talk about it. I would love to help, any way that I can help, boost you up. You let me know. I'm here for it.
You. I so appreciate it. As soon as I got 2 chapters left. 2 chapters.
That's really the hardest part.
I know. We're so close. We're so close. So 2 chapters left. My goal is to get it done by the end of this month. So
yes. And thank you for holding the ladder for those that are coming after you. We really appreciate you being out here and telling the people the things that they need to hear. So thank you.
Same from me to you too. Thank you for doing this. It's incredible.
Yes. Okay. Breathing. As we wrap up our third Indomitable conversation session, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for joining us today. Your presence have made this conversation truly impactful for us. Our commitment to reforming the foster care system remains steadfast, and I hope today's discussion has further inspired you to be part of this crucial mission. The stories we have heard remind us that the remarkable strength resides within those who have experienced the foster care system. Please mark your calendars for our upcoming sessions where we will engage with social workers, therapists, foster parents, each of whom plays a vital role in our journey towards reform. So Saturday at 7 p.m., as I was mentioning, Eastern Time, I'll be interviewing the indomitable Rob Scheer. Rob is the founder of Comfort Cases, a charity that's mission is to inspire communities to bring dignity and hope to foster care youth in every state in the United States, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and the United Kingdom. Comfort Cases has been featured on The Ellen Show, The Today Show, The View, NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt, Dang, just to name a few. In 2017, Upworthy video Comfort Cases received more than 150 million views, and in 2018, Rob was named one of CNN's heroes. Rob and his husband Reese Scheer are also featured in Bryce Dallas Howard's documentary films, Dads, which is available on Apple TV, which was incredible, and I cried my heart out. So if you haven't already, consider getting a copy of Indomitable, a foster care story to delve deeper into the stories that have shaped this series and contribute to our collective goal of raising awareness to improve the foster care system. So thank you for your unwavering dedication to this cause. Thank you to Charell for everything that she does. I look forward to having all of you back at our Indomitable Conversation sessions. And remember, together we are truly indomitable. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.